You know the old saying, another day, another boss ranking video. Today we're ranking the bosses from Wuchang Fallen Feathers from easiest to hardest. I'm also busting out the tier system with 4 tiers: easy, average, challenging, and brutal. And this should go without saying, but I'm gonna say it anyways, this list will contain the butchering of Chinese names. Also spoilers. Oh, and one more thing, I'm not gonna count the first boss you fight inside the dream, since that's a fight you're pretty much meant to lose, so you fight the same boss much later in the game, and that's the one that'll count as the official boss fight. Cool? Cool. Grab your mana base and let's get into it. Starting in the easy tier we have number 23, Tank Palace Maid, the first one. Setting aside the bike crew fight in the dream, which again, you're meant to lose, the Tank Palace Maid is the first boss fight in the game and could be considered the quote-unquote tutorial fight. So, she's about as easy as you'd expect, no pun intended. Her moves are fairly simplistic, her HP is very low, and it only takes like 30 seconds to defeat her. I wish I could say more, but I literally have nothing else to say. She's basically the Soldier of Godric of Wuchang Fallen Feathers. By the way, you'll have to excuse the poor quality in some of these boss fights. I fought the first 4 bosses on stream, but forgot to also record at the same time, so I had to download the shitty stream version from YouTube, which is why there's a big drop in quality. Anyway, easiest boss in the game by far, let's move on. Number 22, Reborn Treant Soulwood. I feel like it's a requirement for 3 bosses found in Souls-like and Soulsborne games to suck. It's sort of a gimmick fight. The gist of it is that the tree will use several melee attacks which will put its branches in range, which you can then attack to damage the boss. You can also periodically just stand close to it and attack it directly, just being mindful of the despair status effect which will kill you instantly if the bar fills up completely. The boss has a variety of attacks like shooting projectiles, causing a fire explosion, melee attacks, summoning adds, but none of these are particularly difficult to deal with. The boss is also very slow in using its attacks, which gives you ample opportunity to heal in between and prepare if necessary. Very easy boss overall, which is why it takes the second spot on the easy tier. Number 21, Nightmare Demon. The Nightmare Demon is an optional boss fight in the Warship's Rise in Ruins, aka Chapter 4 of the game. Now, while the demon is aggressive, fast and punishing, she does have one fatal weakness that turns this fight from potentially a fairly challenging one to a really easy one. She can be staggered. Very easily. Well-timed charge heavy attacks are this boss's fatal weakness. You can easily keep staggering the boss until it dies, which is exactly how I beat her on my very first try. I was using the longsword, so I'm not sure how much success you can find with lighter weapons like the short swords, but this fight is definitely very easy with any sort of heavier weapon. This boss feels like an NPC invader fight in the Soulsborne games. You also fight her fairly late into the game, by which point your build should be pretty much complete, so yeah, definitely one of the easier bosses in Wuchang Fallen Feathers. Number 20, Blightweaver Great Centipede. This is a boss that seems like it should be harder, but isn't. The Blightweaver is found in the Bandit Cave in Warship's Rise. There's a certain flow to the Blightweaver's attacks which, when you get the hang of, it becomes a fairly easy boss. The best position for this boss fight is at her sides, as she can use her tail to attack you. You can usually get a lot of free hits on her sides, just watch out for her spinning attack. Her most tricky to dodge attack is the underground one, as the timing to dodge it is fairly strict. You want to dodge the instant you see the ground light up. Other than that, she has several melee attacks, many of which will miss you if you just dodge to her sides. She has a laser attack that's also fairly easy to dodge. She can sprout poison, so be on the lookout for that. You can also lure her to attack the electrically charged pillars inside the arena, which will then stun her for a few seconds. But I'll be honest, this really only happened accidentally on my run. I never felt the need to go out of my way to do it. Anyway, fairly easy boss. Number 19, Monstrous Toddler by Crew. This optional boss is actually the very first boss the game has you fight. After you inevitably lose, you can fight it again much later in an optional area, the Bai Mansion. This creature is actually Bai Wuchang's, the main character's, younger brother, and the resemblance is uncanny. Okay, so obviously he wasn't born this way. Bai Crew was actually turned into a monster through some taboo ritual performed by his father. You know the classic story. Child dies tragically, grief-stricken parent tries to bring the child back through some sort of taboo ritual, child gets resurrected but turns into a horrible monster. We've all been there. It's always a sad thing for an older sister to have to kill her younger brother. Fortunately, It's not a difficult thing. See, Bike Crew falls into a certain category of bosses in Wuchang Fallen Feathers that appear a lot in the late game. These are bosses that have high stats like high attack power and HP, but have simplistic and/or easy to dodge moves, which actually makes them fairly easy. For this reason, I actually found many bosses in the mid-game to be significantly more challenging than many bosses in the late and end game. Bike Crew has several aggressive combos, but after seeing them a couple times, it won't be hard to find openings to attack him. He has a lot of HP, yes, but the soonest you can fight him is at the end of Chapter 3, which is when I fought him, and potentially later on. By that point, you should already have plenty of flasks to keep you alive, long enough for you to get a hang of this fight fairly easily. The fact that you also get to fight him once in the beginning of the game helps even more with remembering some of his patterns. So while I think this boss is meant to be challenging, and in all honesty, if we were looking at bosses completely objectively, he'd probably be in the average tier, I really can't place him there based on my own experience. His moveset is too simplistic and his attacks are way too telegraphed, with a few exceptions of course, which is why Bike Crew takes the top spot in the easy tier. We're now heading into the average tier, which is the most popular tier in the entire list. A big chunk of Wuchang's bosses can be considered average in difficulty for the standards of a Souls-like game. That doesn't mean that they're not difficult, just not more difficult than what you'd expect for a game like this. The bar is fairly high is what I'm saying. So for our first member here we have number 18, the Tank Palace Maid, the second one. While the second Tank Palace Maid is a significant step up in challenge compared to the first one, that doesn't really mean that much. She's basically a buffed up version of the first Palace Maid. She's more aggressive, has longer combos and obviously deals more damage and has a much bigger HP pool. She still retains her weakness to interruption though, so like many other humanoid bosses, the best strategy here is to play aggressively and try and stop her combos as much as possible. Again, not many things to say here, so moving on. Number 17, Master Raider Man-Eating Dutanga. Now, let me clarify something because I can see comments coming in like, you put Tank Palace Maid and Master Raider above Bike Crew, are you insane? Placement is an important factor when deciding to rank a boss fight based on its difficulty. Yes, Bike Crew is more aggressive and has more combos than Master Raider, but you fight him at such a late point in the game that the overall fight feels significantly easier compared to other fights that come earlier. At least, that's how it was for me. Master Raider is a fairly simple boss. He has a few combos, some of which are tricky, most of which are simple. He leaves quite a few openings for counter-attacking, but also can be punishing when you make a mistake. He is the quintessential average level boss, pretty much what you'd expect for this point in the game, where you have very limited healing and still haven't quite grasped the combat yet, which is why he sits comfortably in the average tier. Number 16, Gluttonous Monstrosity Lu Hongliu. This boss is similar in many aspects with the previous boss. Both are fought in the first major area, both are sufficiently challenging, but not really at a point where they can be considered challenging for Souls-like standards. Lu Hongliu is more aggressive, focuses more on melee attacks, and is overall best fought up close and personal. She also has a grab attack, which is an incredibly short wind-up, so watch out for that one. Thankfully, it doesn't deal that much damage. Her jump attacks are annoying, mostly because they tend to catch you when you're in the middle of healing or casting a spell, but as long as you're aware of them, you can circumvent that by waiting for more opportune moments. Yeah, not much else to say here, again, average level difficulty, about what you'd expect from this early in the game. Number 15, the Reborn, aka Dragon Emperor Zhu Yuzhan. You know, for a boss that is found at almost the end of the game, has Dragon Emperor in his name, and looks so grandiose and quote-unquote final bossy, this guy's an absolute pushover. In the first phase, most of his attacks are easy to predict and dodge. The only real threat here is his roar attacks, which he likes to spam constantly. They don't damage you, but they do stun you and leave you vulnerable to get hit. But what if I told you that you can completely nullify this threat by simply equipping a certain pendant, which is called the Dragolich Pendant? This is a pendant that you can find very early inside the first mines you get through in Warship's Rise. It basically gives you the opportunity to land free hits whenever this boss uses a roar attack. Seriously, you'll be completely unaffected by them. Phase 2 looks much more intimidating, but really it's not. The boss will have a variety of flashy moves to use, like summoning a black hole which sucks you in and explodes after a while, using distracto discs, explosions, teleporting around. But really, all this is just a flashy showcase of cool moves. All sizzle, no steak. The key in this phase is to be glued to his sides or butt. You can easily dodge the very telegraphed melee attacks and just keep punishing until he dies. He also does one attack in which he damages you slowly while healing himself. Honestly, it's better to tank the damage and keep hitting him instead of running away. You can always heal up later. I really love the design of this boss, and the visual and aesthetic part of this fight is great, but he is kind of a pushover. Let's move on. Number 14. Feathery Ambition Wang Jiazhi. Okay, I know I butchered that name, but to be fair, I did warn you. Guys, you're not gonna believe this. The obviously creepy dude who mysteriously nursed you back to health and supposedly kept your feathering in check was the bad guy all along. Who would have thought? This boss is actually the very final boss of the game and is another boss that suffers from the curse of having buffed up stats but easy to counter moves. Most of his moves are fairly easy to deal with once you get the hang of them. Again, like most large bosses, what you want to do here is to stick to this boss as much as you can. This will force him to use easy to dodge melee attacks, which you can then punish. Phase 2 does shake things up a bit. The boss will start incorporating fire and water attacks into his moveset. The fire attacks are annoying, but nothing too tough to deal with. The most annoying part is the fact that they will leave behind fire orbs, which then track you and probably hit you while you're hitting the boss. They don't do a lot of damage, but they do interrupt you and potentially leave you open for attacks. Now, I've only seen 2 water attacks. The Vortex/Whirlpool one is extremely easy to dodge. So easy that I'm wondering if there's actually a hidden mechanic to it, because literally the only thing you have to do to dodge this attack is just not stand still and not approach the boss. The Tsunami attack, on the other hand, I have literally no idea how to dodge. I always got hit by the first and third waves and just healed through them. And this would be a great chance to use the Ethereal Form spell to negate the damage, by the way. This boss is much easier than what you'd expect for the final boss of the game, which is kinda disappointing, not gonna lie, but it is what it is. At least you get to smack that stupid grin off this guy's face. Let's move on. Number 13. Feathered Priest Lu Bingzhang. Okay, here's the thing. This boss is not hard. I know he's not hard.
Title your sex tape.
But I still died to him 9 times. I died to this guy 3 times the amount of times that I died to the goddamn final boss. The thing is, this boss has very well telegraphed attacks. His slam, his melee combos, even his grab attack are all well telegraphed. But if he does catch you off guard, he can easily absolutely decimate your HP. Half the times I died to this bozo was because I would try to cast a spell from afar and he would always retaliate with his grab attack and kill me instantly. Using high corruption resistance armor will make your life much easier in this fight, so make sure to do that. Using fire attacks is also highly effective. Again, this boss realistically should have been lower on the list, but these lists are a combination of both reasoning and logic as well as my own personal experiences, which is why he takes one of the higher spots in the average tier. Number 12. South General Liu Wengzhu. I feel like this guy was meant to be more difficult, but the devs couldn't exactly nail the challenge, so he ended up being easier. I know that some people are going to have a very tough time with this boss. He is fast, he casts lightning all over the place, he has aggressive combos, and he can shoot at you. But he does share in one fatal weakness that many humanoid bosses share. You can already guess what that is: poise breaking. Again, charged heavy attacks are the bane of this guy's existence. You can interrupt his combos, which gives you some time to attack, which for me meant getting 2 rapid hits, getting Skyborn Might again, using a charged heavy attack again, and repeating this process until he died. If you're struggling with this boss, or any other humanoid boss in this game for that matter, it's probably a good idea to be a bit more aggressive and especially use heavy hitting attacks or spells. Stance breaking is very important in Wuchang Fallen Feathers, so make sure you take advantage of it. Number 11. Mistress of the Night Huang Yan. One of the 3 mage archetype bosses in the game, and the easier one of the 3 in my opinion. Huang Yan is a mandatory boss that is located in Cloudspire City. She mostly uses a variety of spells which do leave her open for attacks, but since a lot of these spells are either homing or AoEs, you have to be very careful with your approach. She can also kick you and deal tons of damage. Now unfortunately, I stopped the game in the middle of my attempts and forgot to start recording again when I got back, so I beat her without actually recording the fight. So I'll be appropriating some footage from some lovely YouTubers for the second half of the fight. At around 50% health, she can transform, on and off, into a floating fox, and also adds more spells to her moveset. The key to beat this boss is to not rush and wait for good opportunities to attack her. All mage fights in this game are effectively endurance fights. She causes both corruption and frost, so equip a set of armor that offers good resistance to both, as well as resistance to magic attack damage, and you'll be good. Don't worry about physical defenses in this fight. Her spells are much more dangerous than her melee attacks. All in all, not a bad boss fight. And finally, for our last member in the average tier, we have number 10, General of the North, Ai Nenki. Ai Nenki is an optional boss found in the Cloudspire outskirts. Unlike his southern brother, this guy is large and beefy, so aggressive heavy attacks won't really work here. 2 knights, 1 tall and lumbering, 1 small and nimble. I wonder where I saw that before. Anyway, Ai Nenki has a variety of moves and can be a threat both up close and from afar. His melee attacks are not too difficult to dodge, but they do have some tricks to them, and for some, the timing to dodge is a bit tricky. He also likes to shoot with his bow a lot, which causes the paralysis status effect, so make sure you come prepared for that. Like most big bosses, you want to be close to this guy, but you don't want to go overboard with attacking. Make sure you wait for the end of a combo or while he's shooting his bow to attack him. Definitely one of the more challenging and fun bosses in Wuchang Fallen Feathers. And we have now reached the challenging tier. The bosses in this tier are ones that can be considered difficult even by Souls-like standards. For our first member here we have number 9, Demon of Obsession. This is the hidden optional boss fight located in a secret area of the game. From my understanding, there are 2 prerequisites to find this boss. Number 1, you need to have all 5 chisels in your inventory, 4 of which you get normally, but for the last one you have to defeat an optional boss, for which you have to follow a specific questline. You must also not give the chisel to the Taoist at the end of chapter 4. Number 2, you need to find the red door in chapter 5 and answer the question wrong. Which is kinda weird, locking a boss fight behind a wrong answer, but whatever. If you do that, you are rewarded with the Demon of Obsession fight, a fun and fairly challenging boss fight, and by far the hardest demon iteration in the game. While her attacks can be interrupted, you can't actually knock her down like you can with the rest of them. At least I wasn't able to with the longsword, and this made this fight significantly more challenging. She will start by using sword combos. At around 70% health, she'll start incorporating martial arts, and at around 50% health, she'll start incorporating various magic attacks. She uses various attacks from many different previous bosses, and she has a lot of HP. This is definitely one of the best endgame boss fights and easily one of the hardest ones. Number 8. Bow Magus. The Bow Magus, aka the Red Clad Lady, is a mysterious NPC you meet various times throughout your journey in Wuchang Fallen Feathers, who then becomes an optional boss. During your interactions with her, you can understand that she views humans as inferior, and is all for the idea of sacrificing them in order to appease some primordial deity. It seems she's actually the sort of leader of the Bow people, a race of people that ascended to the avian race. I'm not sure if she's the original leader of the Bow people or just the one who took the helm at this current age, but the thing I do know for sure is that she's a fucking annoying boss. The Bow Magus naturally uses a variety of spells. She uses 2 varieties of homing projectiles, she can shoot a magic missile, summon specters that attack you, cause explosions around her, and also teleports around all the friggin' time. But her most annoying move has to be her shield. After a certain HP threshold, and then periodically after that, she will cast a shield around her which protects her from damage. I'm not sure if this shield can be broken or somehow bypassed, but for me the only thing that worked was to just avoid her attacks until it went away. And this makes this fight even more of an endurance fight than what it already is. She also has an ultimate attack during which a giant golden sword will drop from the sky, cause continuous damage around it for a few seconds, and then explode, causing arena-wide damage. The timing of the explosion is a bit tricky, but you can stand at the edges of the arena, then cast Ethereal Form, which will completely protect you from the damage of the explosion. The Bow Magus is a humanoid, so her combos can be interrupted if you time your attacks correctly, so go nuts. Make sure you have high feathering damage resistance for this fight. Number 7. Bow Sorcerer. While the Bow Magus is certainly more powerful and has a bigger variety of moves and combos compared to the Bow Sorcerer, I find the Sorcerer to be the more challenging fight, again partly due to placement. The Bow Sorcerer is an optional boss found at Mount Zhenwu, aka Chapter 3, inside the swamp area. Despite her name, she actually uses quite a lot of melee attacks in conjunction with her spells. Her combos are fairly annoying, especially the ones where she drops feathers in the ground which explode after a short while, as well as when she shoots a water projectile at the end of her combo, sometimes 2 water projectiles. Because she chains her combos so quickly, it's difficult to land heavy hits that interrupt her, as she gains hyper armor when preparing an attack, which is another reason why she ranks higher on my list compared to the Bow Magus. This is another endurance fight during which you should be getting 1 to 2 hits whenever you can, and not being too greedy with your approach. One of the toughest fights of Chapter 3 for sure, but not the toughest. Number 6. Perfect Bride Fangling. Located in the depths of the shaft area in Cloudspire, Fang Ling is the final boss of Chapter 2. She's actually Fang Yao's older sister, who is an NPC that you find in the beginning of the shaft area. Fang Yao will actually ask you to find and save her sister, who has been chosen as the bride for Huang Yang's son. Sorry kid, not sure there's a lot remaining to save here. In the first phase, she'll mostly be using very fast and very dangerous melee attacks. Her spinning sword slash in particular is incredibly dangerous and will absolutely decimate your health if it catches you, so be on the lookout for that. She can also use a roar attack, so you can equip the Dragolish pendant to make your life a bit easier. You can also deflect her attacks, which, if you're playing with deflect, can actually make this part of the fight much easier. In the second phase, she transforms into the Chimera, which, I'll be honest, is actually much easier than her first phase. Her attacks will be much more erratic and she will rely on her laser attacks much more compared to her first phase. Again, she will use roar attacks, so Dragolish Pendant really helps out. In her second phase, staying close and punishing is more of an option compared to the first phase, which is why I find this phase easier. This one was a toughie. Number 5. Vermilion Feathers Honglan. I have to play the placement card one more time, fellas. This iteration of Honglan is actually the second one which you find in Chapter 4. By all accounts, this version is more powerful and has more dangerous combos than the first version, but you, the player, are also much more powerful this time compared to Chapter 1, which is where you fight Honglan the first time. This, and the fact that you have already fought her once, so many of her combos are now familiar and thus easier to deal with, are the reasons why the second version actually ranks lower in terms of difficulty. But that's not to say that this fight is easy. Far from it. Like her first iteration, Honglan is very aggressive and very challenging to deal with. Unless of course you deflect, which I wasn't. She uses both melee attacks and feathering magic and weaves both of these types in many combos. She chains combos together very fast, which makes it difficult to fight good openings for punishing. There's not too much to comment on here, it's just your standard tough boss fight that you need practice to beat. As a humanoid boss, Honglan is obviously susceptible to staggering, but good luck landing heavy attacks on her considering how mobile and aggressive she is. Undoubtedly the toughest boss in Chapter 4 for me. Number 4. Ming General Liu Chengen. Guarding the city of Cloudspire is one of the toughest fights of the entire game. This boss is an aggressive humanoid boss that uses melee attacks as well as frost damage. The problem with this guy is that I can't seem to figure out when his combos are done. Sometimes he keeps his combos going for what seems like ages, while other times he'll perform 2 attacks then stop, which makes it difficult to predict when it's best to attack. I'll be honest and say that in retrospect, this dude doesn't seem that challenging, but I did have a very hard time with him on my playthrough, which is why he ranks so high. You also find him at a fairly early point in the game, at around the midpoint of Chapter 2. He also has an AoE attack and an annoyingly delayed stomp attack, which always seems to catch me off guard. For me, this was the toughest fight of Chapter 2. Number 3. Fierce Tiger Sovereign Zhan Zhangzhong. Okay, again, sorry for butchering the names, but I did warn you. This is another 2-phase fight. In the first phase, you get to fight the Fierce Tiger, which is a very fast and aggressive beast-type boss that uses lightning-fast attacks as well as actual lightning attacks. Its moves definitely take some time getting used to. It has several melee attacks, jumping attacks, rush attacks, an instantaneous lightning breath attack, and lightning projectiles, both normal and homing. As a beast-type boss, your best bet is to stay close and to its sides, where most of the safe spots are, and land quick and consistent hits. In phase 2, the Sovereign will awaken from on top of the tiger and will cause it to rise up once more. This is effectively a harder version of the first phase, which was already pretty hard. The boss will up the ante of the lightning attacks, including shooting 3 homing projectiles instead of 1, causing lightning on several spots on the ground which cause paralysis, shoot lightning from the air, and will generally be a more difficult version of the first phase. To make your life easier, you want to equip armor with a good mix of physical and lightning damage resistance, as well as paralysis resistance. This is the final and definitely hardest fight of Chapter 3. Alright, and that brings us to the brutal tier. The 2 bosses here were a very big step up in difficulty for me compared to the rest. Number 2. Commander Honglan. The first iteration of Honglan was the first real sticking point in the game for me. Remember that up to this point I had only fought bosses that took like 3 to 4 attempts at most, with the only exception being the Corrupted Priest. And it's honestly my fault that it took me so many attempts on him. And then comes this lady. She was so difficult that I genuinely thought I was doing something wrong with my playthrough. Well, turns out, I kinda was doing something wrong. I wasn't deflecting, because she's actually much easier if you deflect. But here's the thing, The game does not revolve around this mechanic. It's not like Sekiro where the game is designed around parrying. The game requires you to manually equip the deflect skill on your weapon and then spend some time learning how it works. I knew that this mechanic existed, yes, but for me it was just an optional thing that I didn't really want to focus on that particular playthrough. Where I'm getting at is, if you're going to make a game with several different ways to play, then bosses should be balanced to be viable for all styles of play, not catered to one specific ability which will force players to change their entire playstyle. Anyway, enough with the rant. Honglan was incredibly tough for me the first time. Aside from the Palace Mates, she's the first fast-paced humanoid boss you get to fight. And there's a certain way you deal with these types of bosses, aside from deflecting, which is, again, being aggressive and going for heavy charged attacks. The reason why I struggled with this boss so much was because I was playing way too defensively. Honglan is very fast and chains combos together without leaving much room for you to counterattack. In this iteration, she mostly uses melee attacks along with the occasional warrior projectile. Again, the key to having an easier time if you're not deflecting is to be aggressive and not being afraid to trade some hits with her. Try to interrupt her flow as much as possible and put the pressure on her. She's not that difficult to stagger, so being aggressive actually helps out a lot. I learned to do this with all the humanoid bosses going forward, but as the first boss to really put me through the ringer in this game, she takes the number 2 spot on my list. And finally, number 1. Kids, here's a question for you. What happens when you put a Sekiro boss in a game that's not Sekiro? Well, you get this guy, Eternal Glory Zhao Yun. This optional boss fight, that's definitely not a ripoff of Ishin the Sword Saint, I swear, was bar none the hardest fight in the game for me. To even have the opportunity to fight this geezer, you need to follow his questline, as you find him as an NPC several times throughout the story as the white-robed elder. Eventually he relocates to the Avian dwelling, but you don't get to fight him right away. Instead, you need to return to this location after you start chapter 5, at which point you can trigger the boss fight. Like I said, Zhao Yun is pretty much a Sekiro boss. He's extremely fast, can cross the entire map in an instant with his grab attack, performs combos that seem to last an eternity, and has several attacks that will decimate your HP if you get caught in them. This is a boss that requires you to be both aggressive and careful at the same time. You need to be careful before you attack, but when the time comes, you need to be decisive, as he leaves very little room in between his combos. Like Honglan, being more aggressive and focusing more on heavy attacks works, but obviously he's not as easy to interrupt, so you need to be more careful. Also, if you somehow put him on the defensive and start mashing hits, he can counterattack you and deal massive damage, which means at best you'll be able to land 3 to 4 hits if you knock him down before he gets into a position to counter. He also often causes a small AoE when he gets back up. He uses mostly physical attacks, but can also shoot gusts of wind at you, has a big AoE when he transitions to phase 2, he can shoot fireballs when jumping up and cause ice eruptions when he lands down, and he can even summon specters to attack you. I told you, this guy is insanely tough. He's easier with deflecting, yes, but it's not like it's night and day or anything. It took me at least a couple hours of dedicated trying to beat him, and for that reason he is the reigning champion of my Wuchang Fallen Feathers boss difficulty ranking video. But anyway, that's it for this list. What do you guys think? Do you find the bosses in this game to be difficult, or do you wish they were more challenging? What bosses were the most challenging for you? Which were your top 3? Make sure to let me know down in the comments. You know, there's a certain aspect in Soulsborne and Souls-like games that most Souls-likes don't pay that much attention to, but Wuchang absolutely nailed on the head. If you want to find out what that aspect is, you can check out this video next. Thank you for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.